Even as he fills out his cabinet at a rapid pace, Donald Trump's return to the White House shrouded in secrecy. Team Trump following little of the norms and conventions put in place for the transfer of power. It's raising lots of questions about why the incoming administration wants to keep Americans in the dark about everything from who is funding the transition to who exactly are the people who will lead the country, for the next 4 years. Brand new reporting from the New York Times laying out the consequences of Donald Trump's refusing to sign an agreement with the government to kickstart the transition process. From that reporting, quote, President-elect Donald Trump is keeping secret the names of the donors who are funding his transition effort, a break from tradition that could make it impossible to see what interest groups, businesses, or wealthy people are helping launch a second term. Trump has so far declined to sign an agreement with the Biden administration that imposes strict limits on that fundraising in exchange for up to $7.2 million in federal funds earmarked for the transition. By dodging the agreement, Trump can raise unlimited amounts of money from unknown donors to pay for the staff, travel, and office space involved in preparing to take over the government. Unlike with campaign contributions, foreign nationals are allowed to donate to the transition. Joining our conversation, New York Times investigative reporter David Fahrenthold. Molly is also back with us. David, I want to start with you. We read a bit of your reporting. Every president has raised money for the transition. How is this different?
Well, as you said, most presidents raise money from the public, but also take money from the government. And in doing so, they agree to some conditions. They agree to disclose who their donors are and how much they gave. And they agree to limit the amount of any donation from any one person to $5,000. Trump is not doing any of that. He doesn't have to. There's no law that says he has to. But he is saying, I'll raise all the money from the public. I won't take any government money. And in return, I get to keep secret who's giving me money and, how much they gave. And I also get to not abide by the limit of $5,000 per donor. So this whole transition will be funded in the dark.
Okay, and how does that compare to what he did in 2016?
In 2016, he actually agreed to take government money. He agreed to the disclosure limits. He did the same that Biden and Obama and other recent presidents have. So this is a break from the way Trump did it in 2016.
Okay, Molly/Emily, it's like I just turned you into an American Girl doll. Yes. I apologize. This is what people have been afraid of, right? Which is just an utter lack of transparency and a refusal to follow what have been sort of basic norms.
Well, the last time he did fire his transition chair in the end, Chris Christie, and then put Mike Pence in the job. But yes, again, if this is a person who has mused openly about ruling as an autocrat, and so really important that norms and institutions are able to stand. And this kind of behavior is this slippery slope, right? It's a lack of accountability. We don't know where the money's coming from, so we don't know who, how any of it's working. These ethics, rules are in place for a reason.
Right. They're in place for a reason, so that you have an understanding of who has weight in the U.S. government. There's also a reason that the FBI background checks have been standard. That weaves into this conversation. It's a consequence of his not having signed this memo of agreement. I want you to take a listen to what Barbara McQuade had to say about that. Oh, I'm sorry. The process is designed to screen out candidates who are not suitable for high-level decision-making positions because of problems such as addictions, psychological disorders, or a history of committing sexual abuse. A nominee with foreign business interests may skew decisions that favor his overseas portfolio. Perhaps more importantly, the process seeks to weed out potential targets for blackmail because of undisclosed personal secrets, conflicts of interest, foreign ties, or financial distress. Imagine a cabinet official who is hiding an extramarital affair. They may be tempted to share government secrets in exchange for silence. Or think of a broke cabinet official who is so desperate for money they're willing to sell their access to government information. A background investigation assures the public that officials in sensitive positions can be trusted to act in the best interests of the American people. Not having these screenings has huge consequences for high-level decision-making in the U.S. government. I remember when my now husband was my boyfriend, and he was working in the first Obama administration. I got one of these background calls, and they asked me all of these questions. At the end, I joked to the FBI agent and said, well, if I was wrong about any of this, will you call back and you let me know? And she said, ma'am, this is very serious.
Yeah.
And it is. There is a reason that this is proper protocol.
Yeah, and these are real jobs. I mean, Pete Hegseth will, if he gets this appointment, he will lead 3 million plus people. I mean, this is a real, cabinet position. And I think the worry they have is that some of these cabinet members, these appointees, will not make it through them.
David, is that the concern, that they already have a sense that some of these candidates will not pass vet?
I don't think it's as much that as they think they don't have to do that. You remember, try to imagine the Trump groups there, this new administration's view toward the FBI and toward the Justice Department. They see it, rightly or wrongly, as enemies, people that investigated them, people that sort of, hounded Trump through his first term. So I think they're unwilling to sort of let those folks have a big role in this, or they want to minimize the role those folks are going to have. I think they're going to still have to play some role for people to get security clearances down the road. But at least for now, the Trump transition seems to want to give their own vetting, whatever that is, rather than trusting the FBI to do it.
But what is that, David? I mean, when you say whatever that is, what is their alternate theory of the case?
Well, at this point, one of the interesting contrasts is we've been told all along before the election, the Trump people are spending all this time. They're not going to end up like last time where these people were chosen at random. They're going to spend all this time vetting, listing, compiling lists of qualified people. But in the end, it just seems like Trump watches Fox News and picks the people who are on Fox News. Or in the case of Matt Gaetz, picks the people who are on the plane with him. His methods don't seem to really have anything to do with that long process, or frankly, with background checks. People like Hedgeseth and Gaetz had these huge unresolved issues that anybody with Google could have found out, and Trump chose them anyway. So I don't think even if they're doing their own background checks, it doesn't seem to really affect what Trump is doing. He's choosing some of the most compromised people anyway.
Right. I mean, on one hand, it feels as though he is doing casting for a reality show, which we know he is wont to do. And it also feels that to some extent he's thumbing his nose at these institutions in the selection of some of these picks. To illustrate that point, I want you to take a listen to what Democratic Senator Tammy Duckworth had to say about Tulsi Gabbard. She has been tapped to be the Director of National Intelligence.
I think she's compromised. I think by going to Syria and basically backing a brutal dictator there, Russian-controlled media called her a Russian asset. So I do think that we have a real deep concern whether or not she's a compromised person. And frankly, the U.S. intelligence committee, the U.S. intelligence community has identified her as having troubling relationships with America's foes. And so my worry is that she couldn't pass a background check.
Okay, so David, we know that Democrats in the U.S. Senate are going to play a key role during these confirmation hearings, asking a series of difficult questions. And in the case of all of these nominees, what does your reporting tell you about the role that Senate Republicans are likely to play in these confirmation hearings?
Well, I think there are a few candidates. Most of these folks are going to get through, but there are a few candidates. And I would say that's Hedgeseth, the Defense Secretary nominee, Tulsi Gabbard, the ODNI nominee, and maybe Robert Kennedy, where, they can only afford to lose 4 votes. And I think in some of those cases, there is still an open question about whether they would get those 4 Republican votes and be able to get to approval. So I do think we still shouldn't take it for granted that the Republican Senate is going to approve Trump's nominees in a few of these cases. And it will be reporting, and it honestly will be hearings that will bring out more detail. And these folks have so much in their backgrounds that Democratic senators are sort of raring to get going. They want to start holding hearings now, even before the Republicans hand over, because they feel like there's so much to expose.